But I guess right now, I just wanted to introduce our next guest speaker here for this afternoon. He did speak a little bit there this morning at the unveiling of the monument there. He is a community member of Rolling River First Nation. He was also the chief here of Rolling River some time back. So right now I'm going to call up our guest speaker, Mr. Dennis Whitebird.
Miigwech. I gotta make sure where to hold the mic so that everybody can have a good hear. Bonjour, good morning. Welcome everyone to us. Today's evening, don't say. Indigenous protocol, I'll call it. You introduce yourself through your spirit name, the territory that you come from, and your clan. That is so important because people right away know exactly who you are and who are your relatives and the territory that you occupy. And that's one of the teachings for today, I guess. It is for many of the children, as well as our guests that are here, that the protocol that we carry is based on spirituality. And why I say spirituality, you won't see my spirituality in the church. My spirituality is on the land. My spirituality is my belief. And my spirituality is a way of life. And I've always shared with my children as they were growing up ever since they were small. And I said, did you say your morning prayer? And I use the term prayer, although prayer is mainly for the church. I got beat up. I got punished because I didn't know what prayer was. And so I don't use prayer. But when I was dealing with my children, to make sure that they understood, I used it. And I used to have them talk to the Creator at the end of the day. And they said, Dad, I don't know what to say. I said, well, what did you do today? And did some nice things happen to you? Did you have some food to eat? I said, the best thing that you can do is think about that and give thanks for that. Thank the Creator for all the good things that happened to you today. Thank you. Thank the Creator. So that's part of my way of teaching my children to try and carry on the tradition of our culture, our way of life. And I used to tell them, every morning when you get up, thank the Creator. When you go to wash your face, that water is a gift of life. And you use that water, you splash it on your face, just like you would do with a smudge. That water can be used in the purpose of smudging yourself. So you give thanks to the Creator for the water, the gift of life. It is very important for our culture, because Because shortly after when we are conceived, we live in water for 9 months. And that is why we say water is the gift of life. And that is why our women in our culture are very important. Women are stronger than the men because they carry life. They carry our nation. Our nation comes from there. So that is part of the teachings that I have shared with my children. And I'm glad from time to time they will say, "Dad, remember when?" I said, "Yes, I remember." And I'm glad that you remember because you're going to pass it on to your children. And today I have a granddaughter. I have a couple of grandsons living with us. And I'm glad that they're living with us because that way we can carry the teachings of our children, the teachings to our children, so that they will learn, so that they will have the tools to be successful in life, to be successful into the future, and that they will have something that they can use. So those are all teachings of the Anishinaabe people. Teachings that have been almost lost because of what Canada has done to the Indigenous population. And by that I mean what Canada has done. Well, you all know what Canada has done. And what they have done was that they have come in. Each of the speakers that you heard here before me, each of the speakers talked about residential school being taken away from their communities, being taken away from the love of their parents and grandparents, and being placed 50 miles away, 100 miles away. And this morning I talked a little bit about Rolling River. Many of the children in Rolling River were also taken away. They were placed in Pine Creek, which is probably about almost a couple hundred miles away. We were placed in Sandy Bay, which is 80 miles away. We were placed in Port of Prairie, which is at least 120 miles away. Brandon, 50 miles away. Myrtle, I can almost point in any direction with these children. That's what Canada has done. And the reason for that, the reason that took place, that happened that way, is they passed laws. They used their laws to take away the children so that they can take away the land. And the whole reason behind that, I wanted, we have one of our grandmothers from this community, the late Mrs. Jean Gawish. I believe that she went to school in Regina or LeBret. And that's how far. She was placed in a residential school in the next province. Can you imagine that? Coming in, taking your child, and taking them. Sometimes they didn't even know where they were going. You know what that means? That means kill the Indian in the child. That's the policy. I don't want to say that too much, but I want your children at some point to understand that policy. And it goes further. When you do that, you deal with the spirituality. You try and do whatever you can is to wipe out the spirituality. That's what that is. You also do that to wipe out the culture, wipe out the language. So to change your way of life, make it something else. That's not. That's what that was. And you know something else? When they started that policy, the intent was assimilation was the best way to create an empire. An empire that we know as Canada. If you assimilate all these children, they're going to come out of their educational systems the same as we are. Come out as Canadian. Thinking Canadian. So that's what that was all about. Creating that empire called Canada. And the best way was through the children. So we were the pawn. We were the pawns. And there was also another policy that came out of that. And that policy was the residential school policy. And that residential school policy was also part of something else, which was known as the Indian problem in Canada. We were a problem as First Nations people. And that problem was we stood in the way of Canada from taking and stealing the land. So I think today is a great day to honor our grandfathers, in some cases our great-grandparents, and certainly our parents, and those of us that are still alive. It's a beautiful day today. It's a beautiful day that we can share this day with you, and to share the experience that we went through. And just like all those speakers before me, my English was not very good when I first went to school, even though I was 7 years old. But I can tell you one thing that was good, was the language. I was a fluent language speaker of the Shabe. Today I still am, but I'm not very. My fluency is somewhat disconnected from time to time. I have to think. Somebody asks me about a word. Give me half a day and I'll tell you. But that's what it has done. I recall, and somebody asked me last week, did they really cut your hair when you went to school? I said, sure they did. That's the first thing they did. I remember when I was my parents here. I think there's a picture in some of the houses. My late uncle and my auntie, my late Uncle Mervyn and my Auntie Mary gave me a picture one day of what happened. It was a grand opening, I believe, in the town of Erickson. And in that picture, it showed some of the elders of the day. And I was standing there as maybe 3 or 4 years old. And I had braids because I remember in my dancing outfit, my headdress up here, I remember it had a hole on top. And what they would do is they would pull your braid through there in order to hold your headdress in place. And they twirled it. And they put a stick through it to keep it in place. And that's the memory that I have of braids up here. Maybe it's pretty sick now. I'm starting to be like Conrad. But that's what I remember about a braid. And that was taken off. And that was a part of the demoralization to take away my morals as a human being, that there was a power of a supervisor, a power of a priest, the power of the nun. Everybody overpowered the residents. They control us. You hear me say that? They know the verbs. I was not raised with the church. I was not raised with the priests, the nuns. I was raised in a traditional way of life. And where we lived was down the road here, maybe about 3 miles. My grandfather had a house there. And shortly after my mother married, he gave that house to my mom. And he built himself another house behind it. In the winter months, my mother would give me a pinch of tobacco and say, "Go and give this to your grandfather and tell him to bring his pipe." Next week, the same thing, here's some tobacco. Go and give it to your grandfather and tell him to bring his drum. Come and sing some songs. The next week is we're going to tell legends. But we only told our legends. Tell him to come and tell stories of creation. And I remembered that. Even though I was young, I remembered some of that stuff. And I didn't realize that I was going to use that someday, like today. Well, to be realistic for our children, our grandchildren, and for our neighbors. Today I'm glad I've met some people that came through my classroom and they became successful as a human being and with the kind of work that they do. I met some last week. I met one in the before who was in my class that made me feel really good. I met some in Winnipeg. I met some at the funeral here. That makes me feel really good. So that's what my recollection of residential school. My mother was a residential school. Went to school in San Diego for 12 years. And when she was in grade 6. And that's all she ever got recognized. I went into grade 7. The proudest moments of my life. Because now I had a baby. Superseded what my mother had. When I was about 16, I was taller than my mom. That was another milestone in my life. I was taller than my mom. I also had a grade 7 education. I thought I was smarter than my mom. But little did I know, I said, Mom, why you got grade 6 for 12 years? There's something wrong there. And in the way that your parents, in the way that they answered, she sat there and she thought about it, and finally she said, no, I really went to school for half a day. Getting an education was not that important. What was important was, I didn't mind the work because it passed my time over. That's one of the ways that I had to deal with for being in residential school. And the abuse, it's true. That's no word of a lie. There was abuse that took place in the residential schools. There was perverts in the residential schools. And guess what? They went to the church. Priests, nuns, lay workers that they called brothers. Sometimes they were the worst ones. They put you up for nothing. And like I said, because I didn't know the prayer, the nun grabbed me by the back and she slammed me into one of those old metal cabinets. And I just started to bleed. My shirt, floor. And I have scars. And when I was doing my residential school claim, that's one of the stories that I told. That nun was still alive. She was living in Montreal. Old folks home, I guess, where they keep nuns, keep them alive. So they went to see her. But she said, I never touched the children. I helped the children. I knew what they were pain and suffering because they were not in their homes. They missed their parents. And I tried to. And you know what? They believed her. It's still my scars. not offended by it. At least I got to tell my story. And that's how the court systems function. The biggest liar will always be the judge will listen to his life. So, my recollection of residential school is not great. I'm not proud of that time that I spent there. I did get my education. I spent 12 years in residential school in Sandy Bay, in Winnipeg. My way to deal with residential school was through addiction. I was an alcoholic at one time. And I was able to walk away from that. Thanks to my culture, the responsibilities that were given to me as a leader. Some of you remember me as a leader. And I had great teachers. In around the 1960s, 1966, we were at the very peak in this community with alcoholism. I witnessed that, part of that. In 1967, there was people that were starting to push it away and go back to their own culture. By the time that I became a leader in 1980, there was about 40 elders that had found sobriety. And those 40 leaders were my advisors. They guided me well. And along with that guidance, they said, "Chief, you're a good chief, but you got to find out who you are. You have to go back into the ceremonies with us. You have to come to the lodges." And I was glad that I listened to them. Around 1984, I started to go to sweats. I got into the sun dancing. I learned about my culture, I learned about the lodges. And going back to the Creator's teachings. And that's what saved me. That's what saved me. And you know what alcohol does? It's destructive. It's destructive. It's the same as drugs. Nowadays, it's drugs. Chemicals. They're destructive. They destroy people, they destroy families, they destroy communities. And we have to teach our children, our grandchildren, and the love that we have for them. Now I want to talk a little bit about, I can talk on and on and on about conventions. I have so many stories of the pain and suffering that we went through. All the children that I talked about, residential schools in rural areas. The community was deprived. There was no life to the community because the parents' responsibility to look after children was taken away. When we were in the residential school growing up, they didn't teach us how to take care of our children. They didn't teach us about children. And today, we have a problem with child and family services. Child and family services today is the new residential school. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do as a Anishinaabe, as the Tibetan-TV, and our neighbors. We have neighbors in Kisakona, Wayway, Sakapo, Sand Creek, Long Plains. We're all connected. We're all family. We're all Anishinaabe. So I just wanted to say that as a closing. I want to say a little bit about reconciliation. Reconciliation. Reconciliation to tell the truth. Speaking the truth. That's what reconcile in our culture, we always try and start with ourselves. We have a value system to talk about today. And it's about loving yourself, caring for yourself. It started from I froze my big toe. We were playing, we had our own little skating rink where we used to live. We would clean out a bunch of ice on the size of this big top. And there we would play hockey, skate, play tag, and a whole bunch of other games that we created ourselves. This one day, we were out there for quite a long time. And you know what happens when you freeze? Your skin peels off. So in the evening, I showed my mama. I said, look, it's a blister. A couple of days later, the blister went down and the skin. I ripped off the skin. And then I got a match. And I was going to burn the skin. And my mother grabbed my hand. She says, you don't do that to yourself. The Creator didn't give you that skin to burn. And she said that's being disrespectful to who you are. And she said, the story goes that if you can respect yourself, you will be able to respect other people. There were so many stories like that. And I think I shared this other one too. In our house, there was 8 children. And we were sitting around the table making fun of each other and all this and saying, oh, you got this one. And you got a big nose like blood. No, I'm just kidding. So that's how it went on. And my mother said, you know what? You guys have to be respectful. know, the people you're making fun of, they have a spirit name. And of course, Big Brother, smartest. And then I told her, I said, how are you here? And then she said, you know what? Those people have spirit names. It's that spirit name that's going to travel. So I was, you know, it scared me enough. It scared me enough that I didn't do that again. And we all learn from that. Be respectful to one another. Respect. And some of you may, some of the elders my age or whatever, you couldn't step over your children or your siblings. You couldn't step over them. You couldn't even step over their clothes, their toys. Anything that was on the floor, you couldn't step over it. And it all had to do with respect. Back then, my mother would set all the boys' clothes over this side, the girls' clothes over here, and she washed them separately. And she said, respect. So those are the kinds of things that we need to pass on to our children, our grandchildren, that our way of life is the hardest road that you can follow. You say, oh, I'm on the red road. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do this. But it's so difficult because there's so much. But even that, it makes me happy to be on that road. Holy. I think it's time for me to quit. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So it makes me happy that I have my sobriety, I have my children, I have my grandchildren. That's my responsibility. You know, and I enjoy it, I love it. So that's what reconciliation is all about, is reconciling and telling the truth. And with the Creator's help, this whole reconciliation has the potential to make Canada a beautiful place. And I want to share a story. My mother used to talk about her parents. Used to talk about her parents and her great grandparents. They lived on the west side of Golden. And back in those days, we still had access to our traditional. And one day, I guess that would be my great grandfather and his sons, two of his sons were out. And they came across this camp that was around September, October. I think it was October, it was colder because she said it was cold. And she said it was some settlers, the first farmers that came into the area. And they had 2 cows and 1 horse that they brought with them. And all they had was a lean-to like this. that's where they live with their animals. And my great grandparents, they felt sorry for these people because they didn't know how they were going to live through the winter. So they showed them how. They helped them. They built this little shack for them for the winter. And they helped them to cut wood. And it became a relationship. It was a relationship that they started. You help me, and I'll help you. Reciprocal. So that's what that was all about. Reciprocity. And that's what our treaty was supposed to do. To be reciprocal. Helping one another. But because someone got too greedy, and they started taking all the land, all the resources, and they forgot about the landowner. Those of us that had the title. And by the way, we still have title. We did not cede, we didn't release, we didn't surrender our land. Because we cannot do that because it belongs to our seventh generation ahead of us, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren from now. My grandchildren's grandchildren. That's how far ahead we think. And when we communicate to the Creator, that's what we say. And that's what we say. So with that, I want to say thank you. And hopefully that I have left you with some kind of a understanding of what reconciliation, treaty, and also residential schools. This is the kind of work that I do in Winnipeg. Part of it, mainly it's about treaty. We need to teach our children, parents that are sitting here, we need to teach our children about the treaty, about the relationship to the land. So with that, I thank you very much.
Big round of applause. Thank you, Dennis. Very inspirational words by Dennis Whitebird here today, as well as some teachings that a lot of us don't get to hear every day. That's basically what he is doing is he's teaching you something here for you to pass down to your kids, and then they can pass it down to their kids. So anytime we do something like this as a teaching, we should take this in and pass this down to the